Hello, I'm Liviu Bolan, and today I will show you how to ignore files in Git using that Git Ignore file. So let's get started. As you can see here, I'm on my command line interface, and I'm using an empty Git repository. So if I type ls, no file is shown, and if I type git status, you will see that I'm on my master branch with nothing to commit, and the working directory is clean. Now, what I want to do first is to create a file named .gitignore. In order to do this, I will use vi and then the .gitignore file. Hit enter. And here I will copy and paste the content from here. Right and quit. And now if I open the file again, you will see that the lines with a sharp character are considered to be comments, so they will not be interpreted by Git. And also the new lines are used in order to make the code here cleaner. So the new line, the extra new line, will not be interpreted in any special way. After I copy and paste this file, I will comment each of these lines, the lines which aren't comment, because I will uncomment them step by step, and I will show you how the Git Ignore works. So save the file, and then the first thing that I will do is to uncomment the first ignore rule. So each new line that you enter here is considered to be a rule that Git will interpret in order to ignore files that you don't want to commit inside your repository. So I will uncomment the first rule, which is file.txt. Right and quit. And now if I type git status, you will see that the file that I've just created, .gitignore, is untracked and is waiting to be added. I will not add this file for now, but what I will do next is to create a file, an empty file, using the touch command. So I will type touch file.txt. Now if I type ls, you will see that inside of my current working directory, I'm having a file.txt. If I type git status, you will see that file.txt is not on the untracked files list. If I go and change the gitignore again and comment file.txt rule, now if I type git status, you will see that file.txt is on the untracked files list. I will go again and comment file.txt rule, right and quit, and now I will create a directory named txt. Next, I will create, using the touch command, inside of the txt directory, file.txt. Hit enter, and now if I type git git status again, you will see that even file.txt were created inside of txt directory isn't on the untracked files list. Let's use the cut command in order to show the git ignore content. And what this rule is meaning is to ignore the file.txt which is placed in any directory. So you can place file.txt inside of your root project, or even, as you saw earlier, inside of the txt directory. If I use 3, you will see that file, even if I placed file.txt on the root or in txt directory, the file isn't in the untracked files list. Okay, if I if I use touch in order to create, for example, a file-1.txt, and if I use git status, you will see that file1.txt is on the untracked files list, because file-1.txt doesn't match file.txt. For now, I will remove file-1.txt and let's use a git status. Only that git ignore file is on the untracked list. Now, I will go again to the that git ignore file, and I will uncomment the second rule, which will ignore all files that ends in .php .php. Let's right and quit, and now let's create file.php on my root directory, and if I type git status, you will see that no file is on the no .php file is on the untracked files list. Again, if I use make dir in order to create a PHP dir, and if I use touch php file.php, if I use git status again, only that git ignore is untracked. I can also use touch php file-1.php, and if I use git status again, only git ignore is untracked, because as you saw, this pattern ignores all .php files besides the file name. Okay, next I will use vi, and I will uncomment the third rule here. What this rule is meaning is to ignore the files that match the following pattern: log, and then any character, and then .tmp. So if I create a file named log1.tmp, and if I use git status, you will see that is ignored. If I create, for example, log.tmp, and if I use git status, you will see that this file is untracked because log.tmp doesn't match this pattern. I have to create a file in order to be ignored that match the pattern log, then any character, and then .tmp, because between log and .tmp is not an extra character, log.tmp doesn't match this pattern. So I will remove log.tmp, and now if I use git status, everything is okay. Only git ignore is untracked. Let's edit again the git ignore file, and here I will uncomment the following rule. Write and quit, and let's use cut git ignore. What this rule is telling me is that the file that will match in order to be ignored will have to be named something like tmp and then a character that is between 0 and 3 and then .c extension. So if I create a file named tmp4.c and use git status, everything this is not okay, because 4 is not in 0 to 3 range. But if I use touch in order to create tmp2.c and use git status, everything is okay and the file is ignored. Let's use tree command and as you can see here, I am having tmp2.c which is ignored. Let's use git status again. So tmp2.c is ignored, but tmp4.c isn't ignored because 4 doesn't match the 0.3 pattern. If I create, for example, tmp.c and use git status again, you will see that tmp.c doesn't match the pattern because I need to have a character between tmp and .c extension. Let's remove the tmp files, and if I use git status again, everything is okay. Let's edit again the git ignore file, and here I will uncomment the next rule. What this rule is trying to say is that the file that will match the pattern will have to be named something like tmp and then a character between 0 and 7 and then a character that is a vocal, a, e, o, u, .h. Okay, so if I will create a file that is named something like tmp1 i.h, and if I use git status, you will see that everything is okay. But if I create a file tmp.h and if I use git status, this file is untracked because no character between 0 and 7 and no vocal is specified. Also, if I create a file named tmp8b.h and use git status, you will see that this is not okay because 8 is not in the range 0.7 and b is not a vocal. So this is not okay. Let's remove the tmp files and use git status again in order to check that everything is okay. Okay, let's use vi git ignore again, and now let's discuss a little about how to ignore directories. I will remove this rule, and as you can see, this rule ends in a trailing slash. This rule applies only to directories, and this will ignore the directory scripts, the directory scripts. So if I right and quit this and use git status again, everything is okay. If I create the directory scripts, use git status, everything is okay. Let's create a file inside of the scripts directory, something like file-1.sh, which is a bash scripting. And if I use git status, everything is okay. Now, if I use the tree command again, if I create a directory inside of the txt directory named scripts, use git status again, and now if I use the touch command to create a file inside of txt scripts and let's say file-2.sh, use git status, and you will see that everything is okay. Only that git ignore is untracked. This is because if I use cut git ignore, this is because the same rule here for scripts apply like here when I talked about files. Scripts isn't only on the root directory. This apply everywhere where it encounters a scripts directory. Now let's use vi and edit the .gitignore file again. Here I will remove the rule here for the bin directory, and this you will see that applies only on the bin directory, which is located in the root of the project, in the project root. Every bin directory that you will create in another location than on the root project, you will see that will not be ignored. Right and quit. Let's use cut for gitignore file, and now let's create a directory named bin. Okay, and inside of this bin directory I will use touch bin file-1.bin in order to create a file here. Let's use git status, and you will see that only git ignore is untracked. Now if I use tree command, you will see that bin directory is here. Next I will create another directory inside of my PHP directory named bin, and I will create, using the touch command, a new file inside of PHP bin, let's say file-2.bin. And if I use git status now, you will see that the PHP file became untracked. This is because here I've created a file-2.bin inside of the bin directory, which doesn't match the pattern. So if I use cut gitignore, you will see here that the bin directory applies only to the root of the project because of this starting slash. Now if I use vi gitignore file, next I will talk about negating expression. So what this is trying to say is to ignore all the content from all the directories named txt, even if the directory is on the root of the project or in another directory. Next, what this line is trying to say is that negate the ignoring of the files that are ended in the .tcv extension. Write and quit. Let's use the tree command again. As you see, here I'm having the .txt file created, and in the txt file I will use and here I will use git status. Let's remove php bin directory and use git status in order to everything be okay. And next, what I will do is to create a file inside of the .txt named file-1.csv. Let's use git status and you will see that everything is okay. If I use cut git ignore, you will see that the fact that the CSV is ignored is because all the content inside of the .txt file is ignored. Now, if I use the same command again, but instead of CSV, I will use TCV. Now, if I use git status, you will see that I have some changes here. This is because the .tsv files are an exception for the first rule. Most of the time, when you want to negate expression, you will use it something like this. First, you will say the directory where you want to ignore the resources, and then you will say the exceptions. Now, if I use git ignore again, let's uncomment the last rule, which matches against the path name. As you saw here, when you used the asterisk, or here when you used the asterisk also, this wildcard refers to the file name. When you want to refer to the path name, you will have to use the double asterisk. So what this is trying to say is that it will ignore it will ignore a directory named svg, which is located in the root of the project inside of the images, and then between images and svg you can have any dip. Okay, so write and quit, cut that git ignore, and now what I want to do next is to use the tree command, and then I will create a directory named images. Inside of the images I will create another directory named svg. Okay, I will use the touch command to create a file inside of images svg, let's use the tree command again, make dir remove svg and create the directory images svg 3 and everything it's okay here. Let's create the file named images svg file-1.svg. Now if I use git status, you will see that I'm having some problems with the .txt directory. This is because here I have a TCV file which I have to remove. So I will remove the file txt file-1.tcv. Now if I use git status, you will see that the files inside of my images svg aren't untracked because of the last rule. Now if I create another directory inside of my images, let's say images 2, and create images to svg and create a file named images to svg file-1.svg. Let's name it file-2.svg. ls, let's go to images, ls, images to ls, remove svg, make dir svg, ls 3, make dir images to svg, and then create the file images to svg as file-1.svg. Git status, and you will see that everything is okay. Let's use the tree command again and cut that git ignore, and as you can see here, this match against the path name. So even if I have another nesting level for svg, here you will see that the nesting level is different by 1 unit. You will see that this matches the pattern. Okay, if I use git status again, you will see that the git ignore is untracked. Cut that git ignore, and all you have to do is to add git ignore file and then commit it add git ignore file just as a regular file. If I use git status again, you will see that everything is okay. Also, I recommend you to read some useful tips. If I open a web browser, Mozilla Firefox in my case, and if I open this link here, you can also open this file, which is the second file that I shown you here. The first one is telling you what resources to include in the Git Ignore file, and the second one is a repository on the GitHub, which is telling you some useful Git Ignore files for different languages, operating systems, and so on. For example, if you want to see the Symfony 2 Git Ignore file, you can open it from here, and as you can see, these are the resources which Symfony is ignoring. If you want to learn more about Git Ignore, you can check out the manual page from Git by typing man Git Ignore. This is the manual page for Git Ignore. So if you want to take a look here in order to learn more, you can do it. So this is how Git Ignore works. As you saw, here I've created that Git Ignore file with most of the patterns that you will use when you create a project in Git. If you want to learn more about Git, about Ubuntu, about web technologies, you can check out my tutorials on YouTube, and also visit my website livybolan.com. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.